I'm an architect. I've been a practicing architect for over 20 years. Shows my age a little bit here. I grew up in Toronto, but I've lived in Vancouver for over 20 years also. I've really been an entrepreneur in the purest sense for the last 5 years, as entrepreneurs like yourself. Took all the experience I had previously with my business partner, also an architect. And our background is in sport architecture. So stadiums and venues, but also we've worked on the Olympic Games here in Vancouver and elsewhere. I've worked on the Pan Am Games several times, World Championship races and competitions. So, and also I guess you can call it the user experience, UX for events. So how the journey and the experience for the fans and for the athletes and for the officials and for the volunteers and all those layers that go into that. So that's my background. That's what I love to do, and my friend and business partner has done also for many, many years. So for us, as you're realizing now when you're starting your entrepreneurial journey, you're passionate about something. You see an opportunity, and now you're going to just run with that. And that's the essence of your being right now within every fiber you have to actually make that thing happen. And that's what we did. And we started off, as you have too, to see, Bruno talks about pain points. And we look at all kinds of different sports. And myself and my friend, we both play golf. We're not very good. We're not getting any better, but we love golf. And we also are action sport guys. He's Australian, so we grew up as a surfer. I skateboarded a lot as a kid. We both snowboard all the time up at Whistler. Still, to this day, probably more than my wife would like me to, but I do. So that's our world that kind of collided. So as you'll see here, starting out our entrepreneurial journey, but I'll tell you about my transformation really from being an architect over the last 6 years to kind of stumbling my way through and all kinds of journey, the ups and downs and the in-between. At that time, it felt like 5 years or 6 years ago, felt like 60 years ago because there were not the amazing resources like Global Startup School. There wasn't Spring, there wasn't Launch Academy, there wasn't Volition Pitch Nights, which you had an experience with last night. So we had to figure a lot of this stuff out on our own and made a lot of mistakes and got the sequencing all wrong. But now I know a lot of stuff that I'm going to share with you today too. And here, I'm obviously here to answer any questions you can, the best of my ability, so that you can streamline your journey as best as possible. Because the sad statistic is, they say between 8 and 9 of all startups fail within the first year. And what makes me even more sad about that is people just take that as a given. It's like, well, that's the way it is. That's okay. That's not okay. He knows that's not okay. It's our job to make sure that rate gets much higher by actually putting the best possible success formula together to empower you guys so that that rate comes down to 5 out of 10, or hopefully one day comes, so if it's not working, you get out very quickly and then you move on to something else, rather than in that zombie land of your startup where it's not really catching, but you love it so much that you don't want to give it up when you really should and move on to something else. So that's another thing we'll talk about, but for the next while, I'm going to talk about me. And really this is my journey. So as I call this, so these are the only words you'll see up here, so go with your instincts, surrender to the chaos, and embrace what emerges. Like I said, a little caveat, Donald Trump actually works his way into this. I've actually had a personal experience with him that you will see in this story that I'm about to reveal. So starting out, I grew up in Toronto, and I grew up in suburban Toronto, living this nice life, nice comfortable life, played a lot of sports, won a lot of trophies, played hockey because I'm Canadian, that's what we do, and grew up very comfortable. And I grew up with my parents. I love my parents very much, but my dad, very conservative guy, worked for the same company for 40 years. So he was very much a guy that gravitated towards the warmth, where it was comfortable, and he did it for his family and for us. And I'm not criticizing him at all. That's where he was, and a bit my mother was also, even though she's a little more entrepreneurial. But I even knew at a very early age that I was doing these entrepreneurial things without even knowing this is what it was, by going around and selling things to the neighbors and doing this and making money and seeing opportunities. This is kind of who I was growing up. So I realized that this is more me, where I gravitate towards the chaos. If something is crazy going on, I'm not one of these people that move away from it. I'm attracted to that. And all of you are sitting here right now, so I've got a good feeling your personalities, you're probably the same way. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here doing this. You'd be back home comfortable doing some job that you may or may not like, but you're not. So I actually heard this quote about 10 years ago, and it goes something like this, that a ship is safest when it's in harbor. But that's not what a ship is built for now, is it? Meaning that this needs to get out in the open ocean, get tossed around, get beat up a little bit. That's what this thing is designed for. It's not to sit here and be safe. And I spent the first couple of decades of my working career and working as an architect, and I have no regrets about that. Everything I learned built the foundation that allows me to be the entrepreneur that I am now and gives me a competitive advantage. But I was still, for the first 15, 20 years of my professional career, for the most part, this was me. I was tied to this dock. Wasn't taking a lot of chances, even though I was learning a lot. So I realized I wanted to be this. And I'm out in the ocean getting tossed around. It's not safe, but I just had this yearning. I knew this is where I needed to be. And some of you, it sounds like all of you have some business ideas now, and you're now putting those into motion here. But early on, and I mentor with a lot of starting entrepreneurs, and some of them get quite anxious that I don't have an idea yet. I don't know what that is. It's like, that's okay. That's all right. It may take a year, it may take a month, it may take 5 years or 10 years, or in my case, it's my age, a little bit longer. And that's okay. When that opportunity comes and things come together, then that's the time to actually move on that. And that's what I ended up doing. So our journey started in a sports bar in Vancouver. So we're sitting there having a beer, watching the hockey team, the Vancouver Canucks, play a game, and it was kind of boring. So we just were watching something else. And like all sports bars, they had all these screens up there, and they had a golf tournament on. And even though I love golf, who here, put up your hands who thinks golf tournaments are really exciting? That's the right answer. So if all you want to put up your hands up, I was like, what's wrong with you people? You got to watch better things. But right beside that was, you're familiar with Red Bull and Red Bull Action Sports and X Games. They had an action sport event right next to that. That was this one here. And you probably haven't seen this because it's too hot to have them down in Mexico and a lot of South American countries. So this is actually called Red Bull Crashed Ice. They created this new sporting event, completely innovative. So basically these are 4 racers at one time going down an ice track in the middle of a city, 100,000 people screaming, music going, having a great, just a party going on. So this is amazing. So this is what was on the screen, and I had the golf on the next one. So our aha moment was saying, why don't we take, as designers, we've done a lot of this type of work before, said why don't we actually take 3 holes of golf, kind of the best part of golf, and kind of drop that into the middle of this. And everybody's screaming, we're not being, gotta be quiet, everybody's ready to hit a golf ball. It's like, screw that, none of that. We're gonna actually, everything people love about this, we're gonna make this, we're gonna add golf to this.
Does that happen before or after beers?
During. So, but what we ended up doing then is once we actually had some ideas as architects, we grabbed a bunch of napkins and I pulled out a bunch of pens and we spent the next 3 hours actually scribbling this down and designing this, and we had the bones of our event, which we've actually called Ripped Links. So I don't know how much you can see how bright that is here, but you may look at this, it's like, what the heck is that? So what we're actually doing here, and I'll talk a little bit about this a little bit later, we're going to talk about Blue Ocean strategy and what that means as far as finding new customers, kind of unlocking new opportunities. The idea of the blue ocean of being, your business is swimming in a place that is untouched, that's uncontested, that you're actually creating, you're not competing. And the other side of that, they use the metaphor, is the red ocean, is the bloodied red ocean of competition, where everybody's fighting over the scraps. It's race to the bottom for price. It's the whole industry or space is filled with competitors. So there's no opportunity you're trying to steal from each other. So Blue Ocean strategy is unlocking new value, taking that leap in value by creating something that's new. And I could cite all kinds of examples, but we'll focus on what we've done here. So we actually took really the kind of the construct of the philosophy in this book here that applies to any industry, not just tech, any industry, and we applied this to golf. So we looked at all the things at golf that didn't work, that were pain points, that young people especially, it takes too long to play, it's too expensive, it's too hard to learn, it's not social. None of my friends play it. It's look at my dad's or my grandfather's game. It's like, it's too elitist, and you got to go to a golf course and it takes all day. It's like, well, here we're doing something, it's part Cirque du Soleil, we're putting it in the middle of a city, at a park, could be just down the street here in Vancouver. You drop it in for a couple of days, you got music going, it's basically like a music festival. It's Coachella Music Festival meets Red Bull Action Sport meets golf. So this is what we ended up doing. See, here are some other images, and as architects and designers, these are the type of things we can create as far as the visual story to go with this. In a way, this is our minimal viable product. Have you guys learned about, have you heard that term yet, minimal viable product? Maybe that's next week.
Yeah.
Okay. That idea of actually creating, rather than trying to make whatever it is you're creating, whether it's an app or whether it's an experience, whatever your business is that you're starting up, rather than trying to make it perfect and saying, I'm going to make this thing shiny and perfect, I'm not going to let anybody see it beforehand.
Yeah.
So it really is a prototype. It's that idea of getting it to market and testing it with very few features and seeing if the market responds. And then keeping what works, amplifying what works, getting rid of what doesn't work, and then trying some new things. So that's exactly what we were doing here, and as architects and visual designers and 3D animators, we're able to create our proof of concept like this to actually then get some response, which we did. So as in a lot of cases, and with us starting out as entrepreneurs, we're human. So you don't want anybody to tell you this thing is crazy or it's ridiculous or I don't get it. So you talk to your friends and family, and of course in our case, they're like, oh, this is amazing, but behind our backs they may be going, that's a really bad idea, please stop doing that. But they won't tell you that. So we did what you guys are even started doing or about to, the idea of personas, that you've got to get the term, you got to get out of the building. And that's the great thing, that you're going to pitch nights, you're getting involved with other events, you're getting out of the building rather than sitting here and just searching online and thinking, making assumptions that, oh yeah, the people will like this. It's like, go talk to some people, get your feet on the ground and go have some conversations with people, which could be really hard for some people, because some people are introverts, and you can tell I'm certainly not. I'll go talk to anybody. But some people that's really hard, but you have to do that. So we looked at this and said, okay, this is what we have to do. So this is our moment for my ship to actually get taken out of the dock and go tossed into the ocean. So what we ended up doing, not being in the golf industry at all, even though we spent the first year after we came up with the concept in that sports bar, is we found the largest conference and show that golf has every year. It's in Orlando, Florida in January, and it's called the PGA Merchandise Show. And the golf industry is massive. I didn't know this. It's about almost $100 billion a year industry in the United States. So it's huge. And 40,000 PGA professionals, the people that work in the industry, descend upon Orlando every single year for 4 days for this. So it's huge what they have there. So myself, and I've convinced my business partner Philip, I said, if what we have here is a real business rather than just a cool thing, even though we've got the business backdrop to it, it's not just imagery and woohoo. It's like we've got this figured out, and this is a viable business, a sustainable business model. We need to go talk to the people that could be our potential customers. So we boarded a plane, bought the tickets, and went to the PGA show for 3 days. And we didn't know anybody there. We didn't know anybody in the industry. We walked around. He's same height as me, so we had our Ripplings trucker hats on. You brought it here, I can show you in a minute. Our black t-shirts, so we looked like a couple of overaged skate punks that shouldn't be looking like that. But we stood out in the crowd, so we really disrupted it. We actually created quite the scene. And within the first day, what we heard, there was a speaking engagement. There was a panel discussion on the growth of golf and the future of golf and how do you connect with millennials and all this. So we said, well, we got to go to that because there were going to be an opportunity to speak afterwards if we had the chance. So we showed up there late, and it was packed. And the reason it was packed is because this guy was on the panel. So, and as you can see, he had the microphone. I don't know if he actually let anybody else speak, because that's kind of the way that Donald Trump rolls. But of course, this went on for an hour, and Donald Trump was doing his usual thing, because he owns a lot of golf courses. He's like, golf is in tremendous shape. It's fabulous. Everybody loves my golf courses. Believe me, it's amazing. So that's kind of what Trump does. But after the panel finished talking, they did have a question and answer period time. And of course, with my trucker hat on, and I'm taller than most of the crowd, some people ask questions, and then I can see the guy with the microphone. He's kind of looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and I kind of reach over and go, thank you very much, and I get the microphone, not knowing what I was going to say. So there's sometimes in life, you have this moment, and there's this Tibetan saying that says, it's better to live a day as a lion than 1,000 years as a lamb. And I looked, okay, this is one of my lion moments here. It's like, if I don't take that microphone, I'm going to regret it. So I then just for 2 minutes, it just all came together. And basically what I said, I gave you the pitch of what RipLinks was, and I talked about the pain in the industry, and that even Mr. Trump, you're saying all these things, but none of you are coming up with solutions. You've identified the problem. We have a solution, and everybody's turning and taking pictures, and then I was the last one to speak. And basically mic drop, and then back on the stage, as everybody's moving away, I really wanted to talk to the woman in the middle here, who's Annika Sorenstam, one of the most famous female golfers from Sweden of all time. But her entourage is moving her away, and it turns out this gentleman over here, whose name, I didn't know any of these people except for Donald Trump and Annika before this. This gentleman here is with the name of Mark King, and he is the CEO, even though he's moved up now in the ranks, he's the CEO of Adidas TaylorMade Golf. So this guy is a pretty big deal. And he had the most interesting, inarticulate, and insightful things to say of anybody. So as everybody's moving away, and people are coming up and asking me questions, and my Australian business partners say, okay, look, come on, mate, let's go for a beer. That was great. It's like, no. We got to go talk to some people. And while I'm trying to get to Annika Sorenstam, Philip actually tells me, he goes, I think that one guy over here wants to talk to you. So he's pushing people out of the way, like, I got to talk to you. Like, what's this all about, this RipLinks thing? So we arranged then, we managed to sweet talk our way into a 15-minute meeting the next day, which turned into this 2-hour meeting with the 5 top executives. And they loved what we were doing. And this is actually a great example here. Didn't even have this, brought a laptop, didn't even open it up, didn't even stand up the whole time. We actually sat around the table with these people, and we just had a conversation. And we talked about what we were doing, and we connected with them. So one thing, as you start to embark on your journey here, make connections. You were doing it last night. Hopefully you got out and you felt comfortable enough to actually, during the networking session, to even say hi to someone you didn't know, to someone that you've never met before. If you haven't done it, it's hard, I realize that, but you'll be amazed at what will come out of that, of just connecting with someone and having a conversation that doesn't look like you, doesn't dress like you, doesn't sound like you. And make a point of doing that. Because with this, we connected with them. They loved what we were doing so much that, like I said, I didn't need a PowerPoint presentation and a pitch deck. We just sat down and had a conversation. And from that, it revealed, this is how little we knew about the golf industry, that they had launched the day before at the show. They spent probably millions of dollars getting all the media there, and we were oblivious to this. So this thing called Hack Golf, which they're looking to, hacking of golf, which, terrible name, but that's what they came up with. And they put $5 million aside to crowdsource how to grow the game and connect with a younger audience. And then we stumbled upon them with our hats on 12 hours later. So the planets were aligning on this. So after we found this out, and we're saying, they're asking how much we need, and we say, well, really $2 million to get this off the ground, even though at that time we're just kind of pulling this out of the air. But yeah, $2 million sounds good. So they're saying, hey, okay, but come down to Southern California. This is our headquarters where we are down near San Diego. Can you guys come down in 2 weeks' time? And we said, yeah, sure. Okay, that sounds great. Why not? So that's what we're going to do. But as it turns out, this is kind of the up and down part of the journey, that may have sounded, well, geez, so that was all too easy. The first people you talk to, and they're ready to put $2 million. And in retrospect, to be honest, if that would have went through, I don't think we would have known enough to actually succeed. Maybe we would have, because it's not a coping mechanism just saying that, but I think this was 4.5 years ago now, 4 years ago. Probably would have been too early. We still needed to learn a lot. So, since I mentioned earlier, the golf industry was on the decline, that millions of people stopped playing golf, all the equipment sales were down, golf courses were closing, that even though this company was making more than anybody else, the day after we had this awesome meeting and they wanted us to come down and figure out how we're going to do this whole RipLinks thing, they got their quarterly results, which were terrible. And then their stock price plummeted something like 28% in 2 days. So all of a sudden they didn't have $2 million sitting around that they just wanted to give us. But it took us a couple of months to figure this out, and they were sincere about it. And the great thing is about also not burning bridges. Sometimes realize that no means, very well can mean not yet. That could be with an investor. As you'll learn, there's investors that invest at different times in different things. So you got to have the right profile fit. And even with other people that could help you move forward, whether it's advisors, mentors, you'll need different people at different times. So just take that to heart also. Don't get discouraged with a no. It could just mean not yet. And with these guys, it is a big not yet, because there's a good ending to this, to where this is going. So we came back to Vancouver, and we waited and we waited and we waited for weeks on end, really about 2 months, and for them. And they kept promising we were going to get us down there. Meanwhile, we didn't know how bad and bleak things really were for them. And then after that, the 5 awesome people in the room that all love what we were doing, including this guy Mark King, who really is ultimately the decision maker on this, he then became the president of all of Adidas for North America. So I think he actually jumped ship while things were not going so great. So all of a sudden, he'll learn also that people politically kind of move around, and then you got to establish new relationships. And it is all about establishing relationships and cultivating trust and earning that trust, which you're just starting that journey on, and that's the most important thing. Don't try to sell people. Try to actually, well, not actually, you need to actually find out and listen where their pain points are, where there's gaps, where there's opportunities, and really listen so that you're adding value. You're then presenting value for them with what you're doing, rather than trying to sell them and convince them that what you have is so awesome that they're going to miss out on this thing. That just turns people off, for the majority. So you have to actually, the equivalent of actually saying, here's $100, give me 20 back. They're like, that's great. So think of that's the type of mindset of value you got to be giving these type of people. So the metaphor of our rock rolled down to the bottom of the hill. And we're sitting there back here in Vancouver going, so what do we do now? It's like, well, we met other people at the show, other groups, not as big or as excited as Adidas and TaylorMade were, but they all love what we were doing. And as you're finding out now in the ideation stage, you're thinking, well, when are you coming to market? What type of traction do you have? How many customers do you have? They were asking the question in a slightly different way, and they were just asking, how many events have you had? And we're saying, well, none yet. And well, where are you going to have one? Well, maybe here or there. And so it was all this kind of wishy-washy stuff. That's all we can do. So there was no real call to action. So all of them said, and there were a lot of them, love what we were doing, and they said, once you're having an event, let us know, and we'll get involved in some way. And we love what you're doing here. We want to see, really wanted to see our proof of concept, the first event. But as you can see, what we're talking here, even a smaller scale, isn't like creating an app and just putting it out the door and then being able to, spend a week or two or whatever to do it. It's a much bigger investment than that. So it's kind of, they call it kind of the valley of death that we have to cross here, cross that chasm to kind of find a way to actually get that first event from where we were. So we were a little bit stuck with this. But getting all this positive feedback of, yeah, once you have an event, let us know. So I then talked to Philip. It's like, well, what do we do? Do we give up? Do we pivot? Do we try something else? Do we say, okay, we tried for a year. It was kind of fun. Got to meet Donald Trump, and I got to yell at him for 2 minutes. That was great. Should I just go back to my architectural career and basically just take my boat and, tie it back up to the dock and say, that was a good experience? It's like, you know what? I can't do it. That's not built that way. So I think we need to find another way. That's one thing. You've got to be tenacious here. You as entrepreneurs, it is hard, and you need to show tenacity. You know what that word is, and you need to show that you have perseverance. And it's not always going to go your way, but you've just got to find a way to make it happen. And using this analogy here, I heard this one. I didn't make this one up, but an entrepreneur had actually said, it's like sometimes you just actually have to jump out of a plane and design a parachute on the way down. And that's kind of part of the entrepreneurial experience. And of course, you got to be able to just put that thing on before you hit the ground. But that's what we decided. Okay, that's what we're going to do here. We're going to design that parachute and put it on. So what we did, said, okay, you know what? We're going to take that rock and we're going to roll that rock back up this hill here. And we're going to start on our own here. And we're actually going to take all the relationships we built and we're going to get them to push this thing up the hill. So we said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're actually going to have an event in Vancouver. It's going to be a smaller scale event. And we're going to use the resources and connectivity that we have, and we're going to make this thing happen here. So just by sheer will, we said, okay, this was now 2014, this is around June or so that I decided we're going to do this. And we said, okay, this is going to happen right at Labor Day, September 6th and 7th. And we just put this out there, rather than actually waiting for the big announcement once everything was lined up, we kind of went, screw it. You know what? We're just going to say, this is going to happen. If you know Vancouver at all, this is down in Yaletown. There's a park there called David Lamb. It's like, you know what? It's going right there. That's what we're doing. It's going to look like something like this. This is what we're going to build. This is what we're going to get priced. Here, Without getting into it, this is actually how we have the gameplay, which is kind of like surfing, the way surfing and skateboarding works, rather than 4 days of golf that puts everybody to sleep. So it's fast and it's fun. And I had some awesome people as far as players, especially women. One of the great things that's come out of this, and we didn't do it to start with, but as far as our platform to give back, as far as diversity and inclusion, the great thing that we have, that we're only hitting balls, they're shorter holes, like par threes, you're only hitting it less than 100 yards, so you don't need to be some big bulky guy that hits it 400 yards where the women can't compete. So it's about skill and finesse. You know, you women out there, you focus on things much better than us guys. We're always looking around at stuff and getting off track, myself included, that we knew that women would compete very well at this. So what we had done over the previous year, I had all these women through social media, these professional golfers, just below the LPGA level, saying, I love this, we want to get involved. So then I turned to them and said, okay, here's your chance. And all of them, none of them live here, they were willing to come up here and play for free, to be part of this event, as long as we actually got them up here and kind of covered their travel expenses. So we're looking to have half women, half men compete in this, test this whole thing out as a minimum viable product, as we said. Talking about some things you'll find work, some things don't. Some things are successful, some things are a fail. We then decided to raise money through a crowdfunding campaign with Indiegogo and put a lot of effort into this. I have to say, in retrospect, when you're actually creating an Indiegogo campaign for an experiential endeavor, it really doesn't work. But we had to learn that the hard way. You can barely see the amount we raised. We raised like $2,600, and I'll be honest, I probably got about half of that from friends, if not more than that. So, and this was hard, and we realized through this was really painful, and your ego takes a big hit on this. And you're out there, you're probably already doing it, that you're asking friends and family or people you don't know. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. So never think, or never worry that if you're a little bit scared about doing something, or it takes courage, that is not weakness. That's part of being human. And that's okay. If you don't feel that kind of butterfly in your stomach and you're feeling kind of nervous about something, that means you're not really living. So that's an okay feeling to have. So never try to reject that. In fact, embrace that and kind of use that as your power. I like to use it as I've learned to actually be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's something I've learned over time. And most people don't. You saw once again the first slide, one of the first slides there with the nice cozy socks by the fire there as compared to the running towards the fire. That's as far as being comfortable, being uncomfortable. So even though this was, this hurt, this thinking, oh, geez, no one loves it. We don't have enough money. We've got some sponsors, but most of them just want to give us things in kind rather than cut us a check. So I worked, well, both of us did, myself especially, because partner was working on another aspect of the business at the time that helped move this forward. But ultimately, hold on for a sec, that worked for 3 months straight, 16-hour days, 7 days a week to make this thing happen, but finally came to the point about a month before, 3 weeks before, I knew that we couldn't hold this event because it was getting smaller and smaller, and it was now out on a golf course on their driving range, so it no longer had that big, like, what the hell type of thing dropping it in the middle of a city. It didn't have that disruptive feeling. So realize that you only have one chance to make a first impression. So, and in retrospect, it was the best move we could have ever made, because we made so many positive contacts and relationships out of this by being authentic and being transparent. The bit of money that we did get from sponsors, we didn't spend any of it. We gave that back, even though they didn't want it back. And this allowed us to get to the next step. So you may look at something at the time when I was right in the middle of it, I felt like we failed. Felt like that was our chance and it's not going to happen. But what came out of this, through the relationships and the opportunities and getting enough impact and validation from doing this next step of what we needed to do on our journey, one of the players, this woman, she's a professional golfer in the US, and she's got a pretty strong social media following of 50, 70,000 people on most platforms, so she's a bit of an influencer. And she loved what we were doing so much that then she came back and said, I want to introduce you to some people that I think can actually help you get to the next step. And she asked, do you know this thing called Top Golf? And this guy named Eric Anderson, who is the lead investor and the chairman of this. And I said, nope, don't know either of them. So quite quickly, Top Golf is coming to Canada. But it's in the States, and actually they have a licensing deal in Mexico that they're going to be, I think, do about 8 or 10 of them, and mostly in, I think, even Mexico City and with some of the resort cities. What this is like a driving range with targets, but it's not about golf. This is really about having a great time with your friends. So there's music, there's good food, you can have a couple of drinks. So there's none of that intimidation factor of you never played golf, of standing up on the first tee and not knowing what to do, and you've got all these people watching behind you. It's like, would you want that experience? I wouldn't want that experience. This removes the whole thing. So you're just there and you've never even played before, you kind of barely dribble the ball out and it goes in a target and you get some points and your friends are laughing and woo-hoo and everybody's having fun. And this is what this is about. So they've actually created a blue ocean strategy for golf by connecting to, and they're so big now, they've got over 40 locations in the States, and they had over 10 million customers last year. Over 40% of them they considered non-golfers. So as we talk about in this book in Blue Ocean Strategy, you want to unlock in your industry, your market segment, non-customers. Not get the customers everybody else already has, but finding the pain points and what appeals to them. And in this case, it was all the things that everybody loves to do. It's like have a good time with their friends, it's very social, it only takes an hour or two, and it's all those things that actually golf wasn't doing, but still taking the best elements of golf and using that. So what we're doing with Rip Links, but in a slightly different way.
There's an idea how might we connect lonely residents in Vancouver. So I was thinking.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
We'll have to talk about that. Good stuff. So that's the backdrop of Topgolf. So this guy's, Eric Anderson, is based in just down in Seattle. So after I talked to Megan Hart, and you saw previously there, and she had made the introduction by email, and I had a couple phone calls with Eric and said, hey, we're just up the street here in Vancouver, 2 hours away, why don't we come down? So we started talking to him. Oh, we'll go back here for a second with Eric. So he loved what we were doing. And at that time, this is 5 years ago, Topgolf hadn't really hit that tipping point. It'd been around for about 8 or 9 years, but it hadn't got the traction. Now it's like, boom, it's massive. They've got a whole media house. It's kind of like this Red Bull media thing, and they've gone huge, and they're global now. But at that time, they were still trying to figure some stuff out. So he wanted to invest in us, and then he wanted to acquire us, and all this stuff in between. He was flying us all over North America to actually meet with IMG and all these other big groups and CAA, and we're thinking and telling us it's only a matter of time before something happens. But this went on for about 8 or 9 months, and he kept insisting that, we're just trying to figure some stuff out, we'll get back to you. And one thing I will tell you, I know you guys are a little bit away from that on your journey, but once you get to the point, whether it's even an angel investor for a small amount, until you actually get the money and that is wired into your bank account and the deal is signed and there's a term sheet in front of you, the deal ain't done. And we had to learn that the hard way. We got punched in the head a couple of times with that, with him kept promising us stuff, and we just didn't know. Once again, this is 4 years ago. Everything we know now, we would have been, this is what we need to do, okay, put up or shut up, what's going on here? We just played along with that. And we thought at that time, this guy is just playing us. He's probably taking all of our ideas now, because we only have a little bit of IP that we have through some other licensing agreements that we have. So if he really wanted to, he could steal this thing, because he's learned enough about it. And he insisted that wasn't the case, and he apologized profusely. Kind of like that high school boyfriend that's trying to break up and doing a bad job. And so, no, you're amazing. It's me, I'm the problem. It's not you, it's me, right? We're like, sure, okay, fine. And he's insisting, no, we'll actually make something happen eventually. And we kind of went, didn't burn the bridge again. Would have been easy, especially having an Australian as a business partner, and they have a bit of a temper. Of just basically saying, you know what, excuse the language, fuck you. It's like, you know what, we're done. You're a dick, we're done with you. You've actually, who knows what you're going to do with our ideas here. But we didn't. Took a deep breath and just said, okay, that's fine. So our rock for a second time rolls down to the bottom of the hill, where, to be honest, we had valuations and we're throwing around numbers of $8 to $10 million for what we have and how we're going to divide that up or acquire us or what's that doing. So we kind of got caught up in the whole starstruck thing for a second time. We go from 0 to 6-figure amounts twice. And to be honest, because we haven't been in this game before, we kind of thought, well, I guess that's the way it works, that these big deals just potentially come. But that's not the way it works. We've realized now, and now that we've gone back, and I'll show you in a minute, you do need to start small and kind of build your way up. And that's what you need to do. And sure, you can do that on a very, very fast, scalable way if your business allows for that. And what we have does allow for that too. But we were going from 0 to this wow type of thing. And we kind of got, seduced by that, I guess is a good way to put it, that that's just the way that this would roll. So our rock is back at the bottom of the hill for a second time here. So lessons learned. So this is now moving forward to January, I guess really end of 2015, that we said, okay, once again, do we quit? Do we give up? Do I go back and be an architect and go back to that life and tie my ship back up to the dock? But we said, you know what I mentioned to you guys, you got to find a way. It's like, okay, if, you know, what they actually talk about in this book, how many of you have actually heard of the lean startup way with Eric Ries?
The lean startup.
Yeah.
The boom one.
Okay, so this is the second one that he's done. So this whole idea, once again, a minimum viable product. It's like, okay, if we can't manage to cross that chasm to get our first event, our proof of concept, because it's too expensive, there's too much risk, and no one's done this before, and we don't have the money. It's not like we both have some other tech business that we sold for $10 million and we just, you know, spend our beer money on this and have some fun with it. You know, we're just like you guys, we're entrepreneurs climbing the mountain here, trying to find our way that require other people's money and the support and the partnerships to make it happen. So we went, okay, in Vancouver, right around the corner from here, there's a place right next to Trees Coffee. It's called One Under, and it's an indoor golf lounge. They have golf simulators that you can play golf in, and it's a lot of fun, and they've got, you know, great beer and drinks and food, so it's kind of like an indoor Topgolf, but slightly different. So we became friends with them over the last couple of years. So I went, okay, what do we need to do here? The other things we've done haven't worked. Obviously we're doing something wrong here. Maybe not even be our fault, but it's just not connecting. You may have heard this this term before, that you cannot keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. Right? It's just not going to happen. That's just hope and wishful thinking. Obviously there's something has to change. So what we did is taking that minimum viable product. It's like, okay, let's hold an indoor event. Let's take all the things that we've been developing and test those and do an indoor event. And we managed to kind of sweet talk our way into them not charging us for the night on a Monday night of using the space. We were plugged in enough with social media that we managed to get people down there for free. The whole thing cost probably all in about $3,500, including all the branding and the things that we did to make it look even bigger when we pushed it out on social. And that's what we ended up doing. So for $3,500, that's the investment we made, that we actually created our first Rip Links night at One Under here. So I don't know how well you can see this. So this is what we did. And we had a great time, and we had to make it seem like we were even farther ahead, because sometimes it's not a matter of faking it, but it's a matter of even with your prototype, even if it's not a fully working prototype. This wasn't a fully working prototype yet. So it was the equivalent of just showing a screenshot that you've actually done in Photoshop of your app. I guess this is the equivalent of what we were doing here. That even to make it more real, you know, you can even see, we even got the kind of the red carpet type of branding in the back here. We've got someone that supplied the golf clubs with Rip Links and all this. So it looked like, wow, this thing is bigger than it seems. And one reason we did this is our Topgolf friends were still connecting with us but not really moving. And one thing I've also learned this is not negative, it's just a reality, that sometimes whether it's an investor or a partner, that it's great to think everything's positive and they look at this as an opportunity. But sometimes when you pose a threat, they move much faster and they are motivated much quicker. And sometimes the threat could be what's called FOMO, stands for fear of missing out for investors. If you've got something and now they don't want to miss out on this opening seed round that you have, and it's closing, it's almost, you know, we've almost filled it up here, you better get on quick. And so that's what FOMO is. So in this case here, they realized that we had traction, that we weren't just sitting around waiting for them to ask us out on another date. We're making stuff happen, even though I'm using all my influence and abilities here to make this thing look like 100 times bigger than it really is. And also letting them know with the Topgolf people that we've already lined up with other events. There was music festivals and the fireworks down here of doing events there, that we're moving on this thing. So all of a sudden, then, surprise, surprise, they contacted us again. So we went through this. Oh, we're there for a second. And so then we flew down to San Francisco. They're looking to invest again, but they also, the other opportunity, and you guys have talked about pivoting. Yeah, you test some ideas and it's not quite the product market fit, or it's not resonating with your your customers or your personas yet, and you'll find that out over the next couple of weeks as you work through this. But then you do something called pivot, so you'll tweak it a little bit. You won't completely throw it away and do something different, but you'll realize, yeah, that thing didn't quite work. This thing that we didn't even think anybody would love, they love that, so you do more of that. That's what you focus on. So you're just kind of turning the ship a little bit here by pivoting as you go along. So for us, our pivot was, once again, rather than trying to sell them something, we started asking them questions. Now that they acquired this media house and they were expanding to these other areas, it's like, well, what are you guys doing? And you know what we do now, how can we help? And then we just sat back. And then they mentioned about 4 or 5 different things. And then once we got back here, we just responded to them, to 2 of them, and said, these 2 we think we can really help, and they're going to do them right now. And one of them, got some sketches here, and this was for Topgolf. I mentioned they actually build these driving ranges, which are pretty big. So it's on the ground there. They're big facilities, and they're usually in suburban places in a city in the United States. But then they're looking, as entrepreneurs and innovators, we're going to find other markets and have different products. So they wanted to create a mobile activation, basically take Topgolf on the road. And since what we've done with Rip Links, it was a perfect fit. So we actually really formed the innovation group for this large company and have created this. So as designers and architects, we envisioned what this could be, sitting down as having these design sprints with them, and like you have everything up on the wall and working through that, and then designing and then executing and delivering what this event could look like. And it ended up being, now it's in stadiums for baseball stadiums and NFL and college American football stadiums that they have these events. So this is kind of our early sketches that we had here as architects of what could be here. And we actually built prototypes. So actually we did, you can see even the 3D modeling here, and then we actually went out to a property they own in San Diego here, and then just tested these targets and what we were doing here for them. You can see here part of our design work here, so different ideas here of what it could look like in a stadium and different configurations. And this is all part of the process. So once again, everything we learned, even the painful stuff that didn't work for the last couple of years, built on top of everything I learned as an architect for over 20 years, has led to the culmination of doing this type of work. So ultimately they ended up calling this Topgolf Crush. And they had one down in Seattle about a year, I guess January or February of 2017, I guess, yeah, a year and a half ago. And the cool thing about this is they've also gamified this in the sense, so there's a software and a hardware play. We've used this as their test kitchen, that eventually they'll roll out new technologies and new experiences into their existing venues. So it was really on the front, kind of the front edge of their technology, which was super exciting. And you can imagine the people that we got to meet that we were working with on these teams was phenomenal. So once again, we got paid really well for doing this in American dollars, and we've also have this now, among other things I'm going to show you here very quickly, of now we're showing we're for real. Whereas before even the Rip Links thing, there's a lot of risk, and that's part of your job as founders and entrepreneurs. You have to reduce the risk for partners, investors, or even people you want to bring on your team to actually get them excited and believe in what you're doing, so that you're not just a single person that has this idea, that then you build up a team of 2 and 5 and beyond that you have the vision and the leadership and the passion to actually show that you're able to deliver this also. So now that we have the credibility of doing something like this, it's just taken us to that next level. Whereas before we'd say we've done these other things that are kind of like the golf stuff, but not really. But believe us, we can do it. For now, we don't have to say that we can do it. So that is then led into other things and other opportunities. Everything we've learned from the golf innovation and entertainment experience realm, we then, because we've also been involved, we're not just about golf. With our company called Reviver Sport Entertainment, we are about sport innovation, we're more interested in what can be, not what is, and looking at opportunities and pain points across all sports. So it's not just random that we go from golf and then, okay, surfing, how does that connect? Because the real connection with this is we're taking everything we've learned, especially from Topgolf, and then applying that, overlaying also what we know as architects and designers and urban designers into surf parks. So surf parks have actually been around for some time. They're now commercially viable. There's a couple in Europe, there's a couple in the States, there's some being built in Australia, but they haven't figured out the business model as we understand the real opportunity like Topgolf. So we're taking all the stuff we've learned from Topgolf, everything we've learned as architects, and everything we know from surfing in this model. We've spent a couple of years developing this while we're still doing the golf stuff. Sometimes doing this while our rock is sitting at the bottom of the hill here. And this is what we did in the media. So this is the summer of 2016, I guess just before you arrived here, Bruno. And we actually pre-planned this. I'm pretty well connected in the local media here, and we gave the exclusive to Global TV. It's like, here you go. You can get this for 24 hours. And they ran with this, and this big story, and it just went boom in a good way. So the traction we had not only locally, but also the story and the backdrop to the landing page and everything else that we actually had with this, and just SEO'd the heck out of this thing. That what we really wanted to do here, as much as we love, you could imagine actually catching waves right down there by Science World. I'm sure you guys know hopefully you've been here long enough, you know exactly where that is. You know, with a restaurant to the side there, with sitting back there and having dinner or just having a drink with your friends while you're watching people surf and watching the sunset, it would be phenomenal. And the business model of this works also. So we did not do this to build this here, even though we could. We have the technology and we have the understanding, but we knew the chance of this happening here politically would be next to zero. But we use this to actually then develop with all our connections in the US to develop this in the States. So long story short, when we did this, the feedback we had was incredible on a global basis, and especially in the US, that now we have wave generation technology partners, we've got investors, we've got design builders and hospitality partners, that we put this awesome, robust team together, that now we're in the process, and we're looking at Phoenix right now. We're actually looking at different pieces of land to actually do it in Phoenix as being the first one, and doing it down across the southern United States, which makes much more sense. Vancouver's wonderful. I don't know if you guys haven't been here in the wintertime yet. It's rainy and it's cold. Unless you're a hardcore surfer, you don't want to be out there. You want more customers. You want to appeal to everybody, not just this small little group of hardcore people of whatever it is that your service or experience or product that you're providing. So that continues on, but once again, these are the lessons that are learned over time and the partnerships that are made that we didn't even think about doing this 3 or 4 years ago, but these opportunities present themselves, and the more you learn, that you just make decisions. Do we want to do this? Yes or no? And we decided, you know what, we're not stretching ourselves too thin, let's actually do this, because it puts us in a position of thought leadership in this space, and it's worked. And now we actually are considered thought leaders in the surf park development space, along with some other things, which brings me to the kind of last thing, almost done here. And this really comes back to community building and getting involved. And the fact that you guys were at pitch nights last night is awesome. It's great, because one thing I do, well, one of the many hats that I do wear, as Bruno did mention earlier in the introduction, is I'm a co-founder of Startup Vancouver. Startup Vancouver is a nonprofit volunteer-based group that is the local community chapter for Startup Canada, based out of Ottawa, which is the voice and the support for the over 2 million entrepreneurs that we have in this country. And what we have on a grassroots level is now over 40 community chapters, from small little towns to places as big as Toronto and Montreal, Calgary, and now Vancouver, that we are here as community builders. I do it to give back, and I do it, and for me, I meet so many people. I have conversations with people now that I would have no reason to talk to them, and I'm not asking them for things. I'm now cultivating trust with investors, basically everybody within the innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem in Vancouver. Now, that has been absolutely amazing. That I know now for me, when it's time for us with Rip Links, and we're just having a discussion with my business partner on how we're going to launch that for 2019, I now know that I've got half a dozen groups or people or angel investors I can go to and have a conversation that I don't have to earn their trust. I have the credibility already, that I've once again reduced that risk already, because what I did first, and very authentically, and I did it because I wanted to give back, was there wasn't some end game as well. What customers can I acquire from this? How is this going to help me? If it helps me, and it has in many ways,
that's fantastic. But ultimately, it's like karma. If what you put out there, you'll get back more than you can possibly imagine. But that takes time. It does take time. And the other thing I've done on the community building side is I have quite a few friends that actually have podcasts in different spaces on different topics, and also that hold conferences that do this. And for them, the main reason they do it, and now they've managed to make some money off of this, but ultimately for them, they've managed to raise the profile of themselves and their company, because they are now the people in the middle that are shining the spotlight on all these amazing people that are doing these awesome things in whatever industry it is that they're doing. And I looked at this, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't know if you guys listen to podcasts at all, but I listen to mostly startup and entrepreneurship and future of work podcasts, not sports ones, even though I love sports and I'm a sports guy, I'm just not interested. So 2 summers ago, while we're doing the surf park stuff, I just did a very simple search on iTunes, and I just searched sports. And for podcasts, of course, thousands and thousands of podcasts come up, and then I did golf. And then hundreds of podcasts come up, but they're all kind of the same and not interesting to me at all, and I think you guys would find them even less interesting. But then I did a very simple thing. I just typed in innovation golf, entrepreneurship golf, future golf, disruption golf, and there was zero. There's nothing. And realizing, even though you've got all these podcasts in the future of work and future of business that are very successful and very popular, it's like, I'm thinking to myself, over the last 5 years, I've met a lot of these amazing, influential people in this massive industry that a lot of them I'm friends with now. It's like, well, someone should tell these stories. And I thought, I should tell these stories. Even though I knew nothing about podcasting, done a lot of other things in kind of visual media, but said, you know what, I'm going to research this for a while, talk to some of the people I know, ask them, hey, will you come on my podcast if we get a total download of 0? And maybe what we do is really awful. And they're like, you know what, love what you're doing, happy to do that. So I treated this, once again, as an entrepreneur, as a minimal viable product. It's like, okay, I'm going to do 12 episodes, maybe I suck at it, maybe nobody listens, maybe they're really boring, maybe there's only 12 stories out there. And if that's the case, it's like, once again, like the Indiegogo campaign, take a deep breath, learn something, and do something else, and that's okay. So that's what I did. But I started this in May of 2017, and like everybody, I have, it's called trepidation, fear. I can procrastinate. I can find 1,000 reasons not to do anything. So it's still just an idea that I can talk to people over a beer, and, oh, we're going to do all this stuff, and they're like, well, do something. And I was, once again, in the back of my head, it's like, well, what if I'm really bad at this? And I don't know, I shouldn't do it. Finding all these excuses. And I had another friend who I consider a mentor, even though he's half my age. Once again, mentorship has nothing to do about age, and experience is about what that person has to offer and that exchange and ideas that can help you. So he had just started his podcast, and basically he just told me, it's like, just freaking do it. Just do it. If you don't do it, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. It's like, okay, well, I like this guy, I want to be my friend. So I just did it, and did the first couple and just got some momentum, did the first season. It started last May. And now we're 43 episodes in. We're into season 4. I've got sponsors for this now. I've been hired to actually, back at that PGA show where Donald Trump is, they've actually hired me to actually do speaking engagements and panel discussions, and I'm going to be doing another one in Las Vegas next month. So stuff just happens. And if you don't put yourself out there, you never know what's going to happen. So you have this vision, but part of the magic is all these great things happen. And my dad, once again, lovely man, his fear would always be, well, what if it doesn't work out? And my response to that is, well, what if it does? You know, or even exceeds your expectations of what that could possibly be. So this is what we've done. So this is just another aspect of our business that we have, and we've actually acquired clients through this. The PGA of America, which is a big player in golf. We're actually doing a Rip Links-like design in New York City. We're designing for them right now for 2019. That by the end of this week, we'll find out if that's a go. If that's the case, that'll be a massive project for us that we're able to then take it to the next level. So all these good things are happening. So getting back to this idea of the rock, and I kind of use that in a negative way, as the rock rolled back to the bottom of the hill. I look at rocks in a different way now. As I look at this as like a series of stones you see on a beach, and these stones are laid out in front of you, and you kind of turn over a stone to see what's underneath it. And as I kept kind of moving forward on my entrepreneurial journey, I kept turning over stones. And sometimes stones I didn't even know that were there, they were around the corner. And then you keep walking and turning over stones, and then more stones reveal themselves. So I look at stones and rocks in a very positive way, that's the opportunity that you have there. There's things right now, a year from now, even a couple of months from now, there's going to be thoughts and ideas that you haven't even thought of yet. And that's part of the process, and that's the exciting part of it, of staying open-minded and resilient as far as that case. So once again, I gravitate towards the chaos rather than look for warmth and comfort. You know, this is who I am. Keep pushing that rock up the hill. I'm like you guys. I'm still pushing it up as an entrepreneur. We're not there yet, but we're swinging away and we're having fun. And ultimately, one of the key things I've actually learned over the last little while is everybody has a superpower. You guys all have superpowers. Maybe you know what they are already. I know what a couple of mine are. I know that tenacity and empathy and compassion and resilience are definitely some of my superpowers now, because I'm still here, still standing. But one that I believe in, and some people laugh at it when I say this one, is ignorance as a superpower. And by that I mean, if you go all the way back, rewind all the slides to the beginning 5 or 6 years ago, if I would have known then everything I know now and how hard it would be, this journey, I would have never tried in the first place. I would have said, there's absolutely no way I would have tried this. So the fact I knew next to nothing about the golf industry, but we learned very quickly, so we weren't constricted by all the things, all the baggage that the golf industry has, that they're not able to see what we see and connect all the things from all these other different industries and experiences to actually bring these things together. That's liberating. So you all have a superpower. Love to hear what you think your superpowers are, or if you know each other well enough, maybe you can actually say, Bruno, what do you think your superpower is? One superpower.
Compassion.
Compassion, I agree with that. You are a compassionate man. Yes. A good listener too. You got superpower ears too. Yes. We'll definitely admit that is the case. So my ship is still being tossed around with Reviver in our business. It's being tossed around. We're getting beat up, you know, still trying to find our footing, but we're happy. And we know this is where we belong. I've actually gone back. It was part of a boring part of the story, but sometimes when you run out of financial runway for your business, you only have so long to do it. Once again, I had to find a way. So I had to go back and kind of beg a friend that's running a big architectural firm to take me back in to just do architectural work for 6 months. And that was hard because everybody in that office that knew me knew we were doing this entrepreneurial stuff. So they're like, what are you doing here? It's like, have you failed? So there was that. So your pride takes a hit. But I realized for me, I had to do that and make that money. So basically fill the tank back up again. And the interesting thing with that is in that 6-month period, I managed to move our business forward more in that 6 months than probably the previous 6 months. Sound like a lot of entrepreneurs, you've got it's all wide open to you. So being able to focus on what you're working on and what you're not, sometimes I'm sure you do it with social media. You can actually just go down the rabbit hole and you can get off of these tangents. You went to work on certain things, next thing you know, you're looking at videos of cats, and it just kind of happened. And that does happen. So I found the fact that I had to be at that place for 8 hours a day. I have a wife that I love and I want to stay married to, so I got to keep her happy. I've got kids, and I've got friends. So then I had to be laser focused on how I spent my time and what I spent my time on, and then had to start to say no to things, to other people, and especially to myself, as far as what I was going to do in my business. So that actually helped tremendously. That really allowed us to laser focus on the things that matter, that really moved the needle for our business over the next 6 months to do that. So there you go. That's my entrepreneurial story, and a bit of a crazy one. Like I said, hasn't been a straight line to success. There's been ups and downs and pull over to the side, but that's hopefully that inspires you rather than scares the crap out of you as far as the journey that you guys are embarking on here. So I'm excited for all of you here as you
you throw your hat into the startup and the entrepreneurial ring, and I look forward over the next couple of months, especially you guys being involved in the pitch nights, because not the one you had last night, but Startup Vancouver, myself, we co-present with Volition pitch nights. We'll probably wait until the fall, probably till September, till we do the next one, but we are involved with that, so I'm sure I'll see all your smiling faces there, and hopefully some of you will, once you have enough confidence, once again, once you're going to be comfortable being uncomfortable, you will be up there pitching and not worried about, is it good enough, is it ready? So they say, I think it was Mark Zuckerberg that said something along the line that that done is better than perfect. So sometimes you just have to, and done, it's never done. So, and it's just part of the process. So I hope to see some of you with a microphone in your hand, giving a 90-second pitch for the first time with some slides, and we'll go from there.